o'clock. We'll get started with the Town of Littleton Board of Health meeting for May 11th, 2020. First off, I'd just like to welcome Kevin Davis to the Board of Health. Congratulations on your election, as well as Matt Wason. Congratulations on your election, and it's good to have you back.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with both of you to help protect the public health of Littleton here.
Yay.
So 7 o'clock, we have a public hearing. It's a variance request for 22 Woodland Drive. The applicant is seeking local upgrade approvals, approval of reduction of groundwater, and variance to the Board of Health Regulation 27. Who in the audience here is the applicant or acting on behalf of the applicant? Raise your hand, please. Nick P from GPR. Dave, would you mind promoting Nick?
Done. He's coming.
Thanks.
Evening.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Very well, yourself?
Doing well. We haven't seen any official variance requests from you or any plans. I'm hoping you brought all that with you and you can share it on your screen.
I do have a plan. I do not have a PDF ready of the variance letter that I submitted, but it is on the plan.
Okay.
So if I could take the screen, if you don't mind.
Yep, please.
Everyone see a plan zoomed in?
We will in a minute, I think.
Fair enough.
Yep, go ahead.
All set?
Yep.
So as you led, we have a existing property, 22 Woodland Drive. As the screen that you're looking at, you see Woodland in the top left of the screen. There's an existing driveway here that serves an existing 4-bedroom house. It's a small, tough lot, or it's 14,500 square feet. It's bisected by a bordering vegetated wetland. So all of this back area is wetland resource area. You can see the 50-foot buffer zone goes through the existing house, and the 100-foot, encompasses the balance of the property where we might have, 7 square feet outside the 100-foot buffer zone. The existing house, really gonna say known in town, or it's been there a while. This circle in the back, this existing manhole structure, we believe is the cesspool. That cesspool predates any records from the Board of Health. So that's the only place on the property that we feel the sewage has been going for however many decades. When the property was bought, knowing the resource area in the rear and the cesspool existing, we just immediately said we're going to upgrade the entire system. So what we're proposing is a Presby leaching area in this lower corner, or the farthest corner available away from the resource area. The existing house will be knocked down, replaced with a 4-bedroom house, which you can see is this larger outline here, and the same footprint. We're holding and honoring the wetland side of the house, as well as where the proposed leaching area would be with the new house. Plumbing will come out of a building sewer, go into a 2-compartment septic tank, into a pump chamber that will then be pumped up and matriculate through the gravity flow of the Presby system. We're also proposing to back vent that system back into the septic tank to reestablish the connection to the high vent within the system. As you can see, just to kind of point out, I know as you're familiar with looking at plans, you typically see things at 20 scale. This is a 10 scale plan. So the entire property is shown very easily on a typical 2x3 plan. And what you'll notice is we're asking for a number relief. First off, we're asking for remedial use approval for the use of the Presby system. In that remedial use approval, we're asking for a reduction to groundwater, 4 foot down to 2 foot. as allowed within the approvals. We're also asking for a number of local upgrade approvals through Title V, mostly related to the offsets of both the leaching area and tanks relative to the property lines, as well as the proposed structure. So as you take a tour around the system, you'll see a 7-foot offset here for the western side. You'll see a 5-foot offset for the southern side. You'll also see a 5.5-foot offset to the northern side to the dwelling. Excuse me. And you'll also notice a 6.3-foot offset from these dosing chambers. This offset of 6.3, 5, and 7 per Title V for new construction should be 10 feet. And we're asking to reduce that down to the distances shown. The distance to the foundation depends on the type of foundation, should be anywhere between 10 and 20. You'll notice that the field is 5.5 feet and the tank is 5. We are proposing an impervious barrier between the field and the foundation just to make sure that no effluent flows into the dwelling. Next request that we're asking is when we did the testing at February, the soils were generally wet. So we took a soil sample and sent that to a lab. So the system is based on that sieve analysis protocol rather than an actual perk test being performed. And what we're also asking for is local upgrade approval for the offset in the inlet and outlet pipes of the tanks being within 12 inches of the estimated seasonal high groundwater. We are providing monolithic tanks to provide that the tank is assuredly watertight, which is typical for that request. Lastly, not least, we're asking for a waiver from the Littleton Board of Health requirements for fill within 10 feet of a property line. You'll see with the system being less than 10 feet on both sides, obviously the fill will be happening as well. The reduction in the groundwater allows us to maintain the grades on the western side of the system. And you'll notice that we actually get back to grade on our site with the 2-foot offset. The abutter to the south, Mr. Rounce, there has been conversations with him about reciprocating easements, but those are still talks, nothing official. I believe he's on the meeting and he can voice his own opposition if there is any to the application. We have met with the Conservation Commission. That meeting is open. We've had multiple site walks and the wetland line has been reviewed. There was one change to a flag between wetland flag 6 and 5, where the flag went up approximately, probably right under this S. That really didn't affect any buffer zone or offset to anything that we're proposing from the Board of Health standpoint. What they also did during the site walk is we established another flag in this approximate location just to make sure that that wetland line bounced back, just so that there wasn't any more encroachment in the buffer zone. So that's the full overview of the application. I can certainly turn the screen back over to you or answer any specific questions the board may have while it's up.
Nick, why don't you keep that up for a few minutes?
Sure.
I'm going to go ahead and read Jim Gareffi's comments, and then we'll open it up to the board for questions and comments. 22 Woodland Drive, the applicant is seeking to replace the home at this address with one containing the same number of bedrooms. Based on the soil testing conducted, the existing system serving the current structure will be considered in failure based on Title V. The leaching area is in the seasonal high groundwater table. The site has a number of restrictions which make the installation of a fully compliant system not possible: high groundwater, wetlands, and a small lot area. The soil was too wet to conduct a percolation test, so the percolation rate was determined by conducting a sieve analysis. The proposed sewage disposal system requires a number of local upgrade approvals, reduction in the offset of the leaching area to property lines and from the cellar wall, sieve analysis, and the offset reduction for the tank outlets to high groundwater. From Title V and a variance to your local regulations, fill within 10 feet of the property line. In addition, the applicant is requesting a reduction to the groundwater offset from 4 feet to 2 feet, a Presby system is being proposed. It's likely the same relief from the regulations would have been needed if the house wasn't going to be replaced. The proposed replacement system will provide a vast improvement, but I am concerned with the proximity of the foundation wall to the leaching area, proposed to be approximately 6 feet versus the 20 feet required. This offset is designed to protect against sewage effluent migrating into a cellar/crawl space. The applicant is proposing a poly barrier at the foundation, but I'm concerned with the combination of the offset reductions to the cellar water and groundwater. The barrier might not provide the sufficient protection. I would recommend the installation of a treatment tank, fast, single air, jet, etc., in place of the septic tank to provide better treated effluent before it's discharged to the ground. I otherwise think the system provides a reasonable solution for the site. Those are Jim's notes. Does anyone on the board have a comment or question? We can.
How big is the area? How big is the area, the wetland?
Probably, I mean, the whole lot is 14,500 square feet and approximately bisects it. So I'd say 6,000-ish square feet.
All right. Thank you.
So this is Kevin Davis. Wetland flag, let's call it wetland flag 0. Does wetland flag 0 change the 50-foot buffer zone? Yeah, exactly. Is that going to change the 50-foot buffer zone down in the bottom corner there?
No, because wetland flag 1 is actually the closest encroachment. So what will happen is where it's at 0. Yeah. I like that too. But wetland flag 0 here is just establishing that this arc would continue this way.
Got it. And Jim's suggested replacement instead of a tank, the final suggestion to improve, what would that look like for a change?
I can't really tell you. So, you know, we think that treatment is a good idea. That's why we proposed the system that we did. I will say that this system is designed as a package, so it's not a plug and play type system, you know. If we replace the septic tank with what's commonly referred to as an STU or a secondary treatment unit, such as the fast or the jet or the single air that Jim mentioned, we probably would use a different type of leaching area just as part of the treatment process. You know, I understand tight areas. We certainly want to protect the groundwater and the wetland resource area and human habitation. But I will point out that the remedial use approval for any of those STUs that Jim mentioned, the fast, the single air, or the jet, those provide treatment that would allow the designer or the applicant to request a leaching area size reduction, a groundwater offset reduction, and a reduction of naturally occurring pervious material. Those are the same reductions that the state allows to be requested for the use of the Presby system. So, you know, the state has provided and stated that the Presby system is an alternative leaching area with treatment. And in such, they allow for the reduction of groundwater offset. There's already a built-in reduction in leaching area that the state believes in so much that they actually allow it for new construction, not only in remedial cases. You know, it's a good idea, but it's not as simple as, you know, upgrade the brakes on the car type situation.
But he suggested it as an alternative to the offset to the house. So that way, is the Presby system designed to have a 10-foot offset to the house and a part of the package deal versus the other remediation? Can that be closer to the foundation of the house?
So any tank, single air or a regular septic tank, is required to be 10 feet unless asked for a reduction in the manner that we have. The leaching area, the only leaching area that would get away from a reduction to the foundation would be a system called a perchlorate or a drip system. That system involves half-inch tubing that's shallow to the surface that gets time dosed often. They have their own fans and they have their own critiques, just like the Presby and, you know, any other system out there.
Matt or Dan, any questions, comments?
Nope.
Dan, go ahead.
So this is my end of my first year here on the board here, but I spent 10 years on Board of Health in another community with a lot more wetlands challenges, truthfully, than Littleton has. I will be honest, this is one of the longer waiver lists I've seen in a very, very long time. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 waiver requests, not including individual offsets. Just counting basically the foundation of some of the offsets, all as one big one, which is concerning for me. So I understand how Presby works, but we're looking at property line offsets, foundation offsets, groundwater offsets. It's a tough lot. It's the entire lot's within the 100-foot, most of the lots within the 50. I would be interested to see what some other options would be if you're that secondary treatment unit. I understand Presby offers, is considered as part of that, but I think as the state lists it as an alternative, I don't think it was looking at it with this many variances required to be able to get this system into this property with that footprint of the house. Are there any other options that would at least minimize or limit some of these variance requirements? Because we're less than 6 feet or 6 feet away from the foundation. We're less than 6 feet. Again, I apologize. It's hard to see the plan here, but this is wedged in here and it's requesting variances basically for every aspect of its installation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that Dan?
Yes.
Hi, Dan. Sorry, I didn't catch you at first. So as Mr. Griffey, your own agent, stated, regardless of if the house was being replaced or not, all of the waivers would be likely. There's a statement in Title V that maximum compliance is always the goal. And the remedial use approvals and even Title V has a statement that if you ask for one type of relief, you're prohibited from asking for others. So for example, if we were in the 50-foot or close to the wetlands, then we wouldn't be able to ask for groundwater offset, so on and so on. So there is no preclusion from a series of waivers. They're all available unless we ask for one that precludes us from asking from another. It is a tight site. I'll point out that of the abutting properties, you have the system to the south, the system to the southwest, as well as the system directly to the west, are all conventional, typical pipe and stone systems that were installed 97 on, that all received local upgrade approval for just a straight reduction of things. Just no advanced treatment, just knocking feet off offsets the groundwater and off the size of the leaching area. So, we feel that the design set forth provides treatment according to what we're allowed to ask for in a situation that currently discharges sewage without a tank for any settling directly into this hole that's in the wetlands. So there's always an option to second guess or provide maybe something could be done a little bit better. This system is allowed to be designed this way. We feel that it's a significant upgrade over the existing, and personally, with everything being so tight in that area, switching out the treatment to a tank type system or an STU, there's other items that come along with that type of system. Those involve electricity, they involve blowers, motors, things like that, that is going to have to be incorporated into this system design, which we can't put in the wetlands. It's either going to be against the existing house or an abutting house. And from an applicant standpoint, if one technology is approved and allowed to provide treatment to allow for these reductions, just the same as another one, but it fits into the harmony of the neighborhood, and costs less from a long-term operation and maintenance contract and electricity. You know, they have the right to understand why one would be favored over another.
Matt, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. I think you stated most of my thoughts precisely. It's the kind of length of variance requests that we're faced with here. And it seems like Jim has at least thrown out one possible solution that could be better. I feel some resistance to exploring that. I feel like it's our due diligence to say, I think we should investigate that and look at what those plans might look like and see what improvements that would make. I feel resistant to just say, well, it requires electricity and a motor, so we shouldn't even explore that option. That's kind of what I feel like.
Nick, what did the sieve come back as?
It came back as 72% sand. So we did a per the guidance. It's designed on an 8-inch loading rate.
And what's the high groundwater?
I'd have to move the plan over if you can bear with me.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was found at 32 inches.
And is that foundation at the back of the house, is that a slab? Is that a full basement?
It's currently a full basement. That is not required. It could come back to a slab. Even under a slab condition, we would still be asking for relief from the leaching area and tanks.
And how does not, see, you're in the 100-foot.
Yep.
So how does not getting the 2-foot affect you here?
So if we increased the, even if you did a foot, the reason that we did the 2 is to allow for the system grading to get back onto existing grade at the property. The constraint is this western limit that has a 251 contour just off the property here. So theoretically, if you said, yes to a 3-foot offset rather than a 2, everything comes up a foot. So this contour would become a 52, and then we would need to find a 51. So we'd basically be creating a situation where we'd be sending water towards an abutter. In its current location, we're able to get back to existing grade, which is a 50 here and a 50 here. So this water can come out and run along the property down into the wetlands.
Could that also
there
be
any-
accomplished with a stone trench if you just run the surface water around?
A stone trench to the surface as far as the drainage?
Yeah.
I'd have to double check the offsets. But I don't believe so. I think we're too tight to a drainage feature to a leaching area.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at a 2-foot, and we'll take a poll of the board. In my opinion, it's a treatment tank and it's a geomat or a perk for you to get the 2 feet within the 100-foot.
But you would entertain a 3-foot offset, if I'm understanding correctly?
No, I just asked the question.
Well done, sir. Well done.
What if is there any reason why you can't move the house 5 feet to the northeast?
Yes.
Explain.
Zoning.
Offset for what? Property line? What? I'm just curious.
Property lines, yes.
Is the house shifted as far to the northeast as it possibly can go to give you the maximum distance between the leaching field and the back part of the house?
Yes. These corners here are at the existing footprint of the existing dwelling.
Existing dwellings underneath in the shaded area, is it not?
And there's a deck here.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Does it actually say a 4-bedroom on the assessor's record?
Yes.
Are there actually 4 bedrooms in the house?
Don't know. I'm not going inside.
All right.
I don't mean that defiantly. I just
Yeah,
don't-
no, I understand. Yep. Don't ask, don't tell. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, you know, does anyone have a motion comment? I mean, I'm of the mind to continue this and see if Nick can bring back a plan that, you know, knocks off some of these variances. I mean, I think in general, we're probably fine with fill within 10 feet, probably fine with the inlet and outlet and within the 12 inches, fine with the sieve, you know, it's the treatment and it's the offset, and concerns about the proximity to the foundation if it's going to be a full basement.
So would those concerns be alleviated if there was no full basement within 10 feet of the leaching area or 20 feet per the code?
I mean, I feel like this board has approved 10 feet before. You know, I do see some benefit to going with the perk or the Geomat and you being able to reduce the overall square footage of the system. I think that's going to help out on a lot of accounts.
Well,
it's just money. I know.
No, yeah, right. So the interesting part of the Geomat needing to be level, that I don't see it providing a benefit. The drip provides a benefit from a standpoint of following the natural topography. But again, you know, it's one of those, asking to have a redesign is essentially putting one approved technology above another. And, you know, the alternative design isn't going to increase the 5-foot offset to the southern property line or the 7 in a manner that to the west that's going to, you know, provide the 10 feet per the code and, you know, relative to the foundation. I just don't see it getting to the code either. So, you know,
yeah,
really,
we know this lot is not going to be fully compliant.
Well, right. But I'm just getting back to your comment about knocking off some of the variances, but, you know, then you listed through all of the local upgrade approvals and the local waiver. So really the one that you seem to be disagreeing with is the reduction in groundwater just using the Presby.
Yeah, without treatment, I'd have a hard time with that. Does anyone on the board have a motion?
Do we have any abutters here that
Oh, correct. Yeah.
want to provide input?
Rob, Dave, can you promote Rob?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Gino.
I make a motion to accept and give him the variance that he needs. He does it as best as he can. If he could have done it differently, he would have done it differently. The land is very small. The house is very old. He put the Presby. He does as much as he can. I make a motion to
Thank you.
accept.
Is there a second?
Rob is allowed to talk.
Yes, go ahead, Rob.
I appreciate all the time that all of you put into this, and I know very little about this. It does concern me because of how close the property is, that a proposal that would provide, if I'm understanding correctly, some aspect of blowers that could bring noise as close to my property as it might be, I would be concerned. I don't know enough about it, and trust that all of you do, but I just wanted to make that statement known that I have that concern.
And are you, which abutter are you? Are you?
I'm south.
South, okay. Nick, can you speak to the noise on the blowers of a drip system?
So the drip system itself wouldn't get the reduction on its own. It would need the treatment unit, the jet, the fast, the singular that Mr. Griffey mentioned. You know, I'm not a sales rep for any of them. I've just been, in my experience in designing them, dealing with the fast, for example, that has a blower that has a 5 to 7 horsepower motor that actually injects air into the fixed activated sludge treatment compartment of the fast component.
That's in the tank.
That's in the tank, but not the
Covered.
blower. The blower is actually remotely located. It has to be within 100 feet of the tank. I've heard decibel levels anywhere between 50 to 60. I believe they say it's basically an ongoing conversation is kind of a baseline, the way they describe it. The other problem is, well, it's not your problem, not mine. Well, it's mine, keeps me employed. Most people get annoyed by the noise, so they turn them off if they're having a barbecue or a function or something like that, and then they'll turn them back on, which actually kills some of the bugs within the treatment. So you get a startup and it has a smell until it gets going. So a lot of people don't like the noise, so they shut it off. They turn it back on. They don't like the smell, so they shut it off again. And then you have an expensive tank that to provide treatment that doesn't provide the treatment. So it's a tool, you know, I have designed them in my times, but you know, it's kind of why the carpenter has the hammer, the screwdriver, and the saw. You know, each one has their selected use.
Rob, do you have anything else? Rob, do you have anything else to say?
No. No,
Okay. Well, thank you for your comments.
thank you.
Dave, can you please promote Ted Doucette?
Hi, thanks for hearing me out, Kevin and Jimmy. I'm coming up next, or I'm coming up soon with a similar project, and I'd just like to give a 60-second history of some of these IA systems. Back when I started doing this, say 2003 to 2008, I was designing a lot of systems with these sludge activated systems like the FAST and the Singulair and things like that. Because at that time, those were the only ones that would allow you to reduce the size of the system, and they would let you reduce the offset from groundwater. Now, Presby has since come on the market, and now even later, we get the Geomat has come on the market, which give you those same reductions as far as size and offset to groundwater. So when we start talking about doing activated instead of passive, so that would be doing a FAST in place of a Presby, you know, they have the same function. So I'm not saying they're as good as one another or, you know, one is better than the other, but it seems that once Presby came on the market, they're getting the same reductions, and they replace them. I've done one in the last 15 years, one FAST. And actually that was hooked up to a Presby as well for other reasons in Acton. But, you know, if you're looking at active versus passive, they seem to be the Presby replaced them with the same offset, so it may provide the same level of treatment. And Nick was right. And the thing about a lot of these active systems, they have the fans and they get turned off. They're supposed to be monitored. People stop having the monitoring, so they just fall apart, and they're not used the way they should be. And like you said, it becomes just an expensive tank. So
And then there's the maintenance.
that's my
agreement.
2 cents, my 60-second history of IA systems
Your 60
from
seconds
my
is up.
experience going through this for like 20 something years.
And then there's a maintenance agreement too, right? So
Correct. So any of the STUs, actually part of the approval process will require an annual contract from an independent person who comes and maintains, takes samples, things like that. There is a requirement with Presby for yearly maintenance. There is an education to get certified to be able to do that, but it's less.
I thought they eliminated that requirement.
The testing requirement?
No, the annual.
As far as I'm aware, that's still active. I mean,
I don't think so.
I can't recite it, unfortunately. I don't do the designs as
Okay,
often
well,
as I.
regardless, I don't think we're in a position to approve the plan presented in front of us tonight. That's just my opinion. We'll take a poll of the board in a minute. My suggestion would be to do some work on this, come back with probably, the 3-foot offset and, a slab to get to that 10 feet for the tank. Like I said, those other variances on the list, I could see us getting around those. But I'd like to ask if there's anybody on the board who'd like to make a motion.
Oh, boy.
Well, I'll make a motion to continue until our next meeting, May 25th.
Second.
Roll call vote. Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis, yes on the continuance.
Gino Fratelloni,
I'm a little disappointed, but I'd say we give him another chance.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
and Matt Wason.
Wason, yes.
And Kevin Baker votes yes. Thanks for all your time and explanations tonight, Nick. I think we're getting there. We just need to sharpen the pencil a little bit and we can put this to bed.
You said it was the 25th?
Yes.
Have a good night.
Want to do 7 o'clock?
Sure.
Okay.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Too. Thanks. Ted, are you next? Are you 710? 67 Foster?
No, I'm sorry. I'm 149 Tattawan. Sorry.
Chris McKenzie, are you 67 Foster? Yeah, he's got his hand raised. Chris, we promoted you.
Dave, when you can, if you could just return Ted to the audience for now.
All right. All right. I think I'm in.
You're in. Can you share your
All right.
screen with a plan?
I would love to.
All right.
All right. Can you see that all right?
Yep.
Right. Chris McKenzie from Dillison Roy here. I'd like to back Nick up on his assessment of that site. I probably would have done just about the same thing on a site like that. And that brings me to my site here, actually. This is 67 Foster Street. It's an existing 3-bedroom house. Wetland located back here, wetland flag 5, 4, down to 1 here. So we're pretty small area here that we're dealing with. 100-foot buffer rides along right up here. And then Foster Street's right there. There's existing water service and gas service coming in through the front yard. We did a test hole number 1 right here in the front yard with Jim Gareffi there. And both him and Jack Maloney of our office found that hole to be unacceptable for a septic system. And they opted to move to the backyard and did a test hole number 2 here and a test hole number 3 there. Obviously, they're only about 20 or 25 feet from the wetland. Based on those results, we designed a system. We had 28 inches to groundwater on both of those deep holes. And we sent the soil sample into the lab and got a class 2 soil back, which is a 30-minute rate. So that ends up being a fairly large system requirement. A lot of people have already looked at this side yard here. The Conservation Commission, I met with them already, and they did a site walk. They asked about this area over here. This is very steep land. It's a large drop, about 20 feet from the road down to the backyard. So any system that would go here would have to be designed on the elevation up here and would put the grading down this end of the system in the 10 to 20 foot or 10 to 15 foot high range. It's
Can't you step down a Presby on that?
What's that?
Can you step down a Presby on that grade?
It's too short of a distance between the garage and the property line. You'd only have about 10-foot long Presby pipes, and they really like them to be 30 feet. And even still, it would still, you'd be filling all the way down. So even down here, you'd still end up with a 5 or a 6 foot fill minimum at the breakout area, because you can only step the Presbys at a certain percentage. We actually looked at a Presby system in the backyard here. It didn't fit in very well. I did do a conventional overlay. I'll show that to you here. That is a retaining wall going around the entire thing, with a 102 being the finished grade, with about a 6-foot fill or 7-foot fill at the worst case area here. So we had to wall around that. So we immediately threw out a conventional system and went to, I looked at a Presby, and it didn't fit in here any better than the conventional system. So then the last alternate that we looked at is the Geomat system, which is what we have designed here. This Geomat's going to be 21 feet off of the wetland and 21 feet off of the foundation. That's one of the local upgrades that we're asking for, is the reduction of the system setback from a bordering wetland. 21 foot from a leach area is being proposed. And we're also asking for the local upgrade for the sieve analysis. Based on this offset, that same kind of thing that Nick was talking about, we don't meet the requirement or the minimum standards to be able to have a reduction in our groundwater offset. So we are maintaining a 4-foot required groundwater offset in this situation because we won't qualify for any further reduction there. So based on that, we've got a system here that the final grade right over the system and right over the actual Geomat is going to be an elevation of 102. As I showed you, the conventional system was going to be 102 around the entire thing, right up to the top of the wall. It can drop off at a much better rate than even the Presby allows for breakout. It's only a 2-foot distance to breakout. So we basically have a 3-to-1 slope for the first few feet down to a poly barrier. And then after the poly barrier, we have a 2-to-1 slope. Goes almost right up to the wetlands. We're only a couple of feet away. I met with them the other night. They certainly got some concerns in this area, and we would certainly be open to providing a small, 2-foot wall along the wetland area to help maintain a little bit more of an offset there. We're proposing a septic tank to replace the existing septic tank to a pump chamber and then pumping it up to the Geomat system here. Part of the reason why we have to have the 21 foot, we can't really move the system any closer this way and say ask for a variance from the foundation, is in order to fit all of this stuff in here, I needed a place to put the septic tank and pump chamber. So the septic tank's the minimum 10 feet off of the foundation, and then the tank's only about 3 or 4 feet off of the Geomat. So like I said, we're asking for the 2 local upgrades. One of the review comments that Jim had, and I did make that revision onto this plan, but I haven't had our engineer sign off on it. So we've included buoyancy calcs to show that the septic tank and pump chamber meet those. And he asked that we include, the Conservation Commission, asked that we include a silt fence along with our straw wattles for erosion control. So that change has been made to the plan as well.
All right, I'll go ahead and read Jim's comments and then the board can comment. 67 Foster Street, the leaching area for this house is most likely in the seasonal high groundwater table and by definition in failure. Though it is a good size lot, the house site close to the road and the land slopes toward the house, the sides of the house are not large enough for a system and slope, but there's a small area in the back of the house that is reasonably flat before the wetlands begin. The applicant is proposing to install a long, narrow Geomat leaching area in the backyard to minimize the height of the system and the grading fill needed. Though the leaching area will remain a 4-foot offset to the seasonal high groundwater table, the applicant will need local upgrade approvals for the reduction of the offset of the leaching area to the wetlands. 50 feet is required, 21 feet provided. And for the use of a sieve analysis, the soil was too wet to perk. The leaching area design incorporates an impervious barrier, which requires approval from the board. Though the system is close to the wetlands, the bottom of the leaching area will comply with Title V groundwater offset, which is a vast improvement, and I believe this is a good solution for the site. We'll go in alphabetical order just to keep things orderly. Kevin Davis, any comments, questions?
Still thinking, can you circle back?
Gino Fratelloni, any comments, questions?
No, it's very small area, but he's got to work with it, you know what I mean? So.
Dan Kane, any questions, comments?
I know Chris said you already talked with conservation and they have some concerns, but overall are okay with the plan. I know obviously we are independent of them, but we certainly like working together so that we're all on the same page and don't bounce you back and forth. I think it's, again, just like the last one, doing the best you can with what you got, but I think you've, very close to compliance with very minimal variances. I think it looks reasonable. I don't have any questions.
Matt Wason, questions, comments?
No questions.
Charlotte Russell, are you in a butter?
I am in a butter, and it's a difficult site, and I'm totally in approval of what they're proposing.
All right, thank you. Was that it? Oh, okay. Dave, can you put Charlotte back in the audience? My comments are, Chris, you said you were talking about a wall.
Yeah, if we were to do a wall, it would be mostly to help give the conservation a good feeling that we're giving a little more room between the edge of our wetland, which runs right along here, and the final toe of slope. Obviously, we're running this right up against this. And to be honest with you, in their site walk, they were a little concerned. You walk around out here, and it's all lawn for the most part, but there's a few vegetations poking out of the lawn close to our wetland flags that they didn't like seeing. So certainly they're concerned that obviously the house has been there for a long time. There may have been some, a little bit of fill put in to push the wetlands back in the past. So I can understand the concern about not wanting it to push any further. So a wall would be a situation really, maybe a fieldstone wall, 1 or 2 feet high at the most, and just along this area right here where we run tight to the wetland.
And has conservation approved this yet, or you still need to go before them after this?
No, they have not. I wanted to make sure, I wanted to, look at this with you guys. I understand this is a tough site, and I certainly didn't want to, we hadn't gotten a DEP file number with them, so they had to continue no matter what. But I wanted to make sure that we had conversations with you guys before I went too far with them.
My only last comment is I think, I think treatment might be appropriate, being you're 21 feet from the wetlands.
Yeah, we're providing a 4-foot groundwater offset. It's a pretty minimal request. Like I said, we sized this Geomat based on the fact that it gave us the thinnest system that we could squeeze in and maximize the length of the property while minimizing the width of the system and maximizing our offsets from the wetland and from the foundation. So we're pretty tight on either end as well.
Yeah, I can see.
The nice thing about the Geomat, it allows us to have a really adjustable length here.
And what did that first test hole look like?
This first test hole, again, I wasn't there. Jack Maloney from our office and Jim Gareffi were both there and witnessed the hole. One problem is it didn't have the required minimum depth of material. 4 feet of material is required. It had just under, it was like 2 or 3 inches under, and they weren't satisfied with the actual material of it. I don't know what it was about it. It was rocky and it just, they weren't happy with the material. And so they immediately moved away from that area and went down back here. Especially, you got a gas line and a water service there.
Yeah, I know.
It really add to the expense of construction. And that's one of the things we got to keep in mind. I understand the STU thing, and I agree with Nick that these Geomats and Presbys were born of the fact that those STUs are very expensive. I don't think you can put one of those in without adding $15,000 to the cost of the system that's already being built, in addition to the cost of the leach area. We reserve those for the worst of the worst situations. I don't know that that's what this is. I mean,
you have the 4 feet, so.
Right. We're providing the offset. We really meet most of the critical offset requirements. There's no wells, there's no drinking waters. You know, if we're 40 feet from a drinking water well or in a zone 1 or something like that, then treatment makes more sense. But we're not in any kind of drinking water issues at all here. And we do have a 4-foot separation as required.
Does anyone on the board have a motion?
Make a motion, I accept it, that he puts the wall there.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the plan and approve the 2 variances requested, along with installing a 2-foot wall at the back edge of the property along the wetlands. Is there a second? You got to say it, Kevin.
I was on mute. Sorry. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Kevin Davis.
Oh,
A
Kevin
yes
Davis.
vote.
Yeah,
A
okay.
yes vote would be good.
Yeah. Kevin Davis, yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Gina Ferraro, yes, thank you.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason,
Wason, yes.
and Kevin Baker votes yes. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, guys.
Yeah.
Let me get my screen off of there for you.
I think Dave will do it.
He can do that.
Okay, next up is public hearing, a variance request for 149 Tehadawin Road. Applicant is seeking local upgrade approval of a reduction to groundwater and variance to Littleton Board of Health Regulation number 27. Is that Ted Doucette? Or is it Nick again? Oh, it's Ted. Dave, can you, I think Nick's gone. Can you promote Ted? Or, yeah.
I'm here. You can throw me back to the participants.
Good evening again. Thank you. Ted Doucette representing the applicant, Connie Hirsch, who I don't see here listed right now. But seems like we have a recurring theme tonight. A lot of this testing that happens in the spring, there's the high groundwater and we can't get the perk testing. So we're doing a lot of these alternatives perk tests. Sorry, I'm trying to get my plan up here. Okay, so here is the lot that I'm working on. This is Tehadawin Road. This is more up towards the is it Harwood? The Harwood end. As you come off Harwood, you start down the hill, and it's on the left there. Single family house, 3-bedroom, served by town water, and another difficult, tight site with high groundwater and a wetland in the back. So we have the wetlands in the back here. And then we have the 50-foot offset and we have the 100-foot buffer zone. So we're meeting the 50-foot offset, but we're still within the buffer zone. So it complies with Title V as far as the wetlands. It's just that squeezing it in here, again, the common theme tonight is why we need the variances. So we're going with a Geomat in this area, which is going to be served by pressure distribution. We have full size septic system, after we take the 60% reduction for the approval. Because the grade is coming up and the site slopes, we have to put in a wall over here to control the fill from to hold the fill on the property. Septic tank, pump chamber, pressure distribution, Geomat. And the variances that we're asking for are, we're asking to allow a retaining wall to be installed so to minimize breakout fill and impact to the neighboring property. Alternative percolation testing guidance that requires board of health approval, but it's necessary here. And then we're requesting a reduction in the groundwater offset requirement as allowed by the general use certification for Geomat. And then we're asking to allow a septic system to be located less than 10 feet from a property line. So when we do that, we have to have a professional land surveyor locate the lot line. And we did that. And that's referenced up on my plan up over here. It references property lines based on plan of land created by Charles Brennan, PLS. So that's the plan reference there. So originally we had, come over here, you can see this testing over here. The original design was to put in a Presby on this slope here. Because of the groundwater offset, the system was still just too high out of the ground, and it would cause filling along the foundation. It would create a high wall along this side. Not too high a wall, I guess, it's still less than 4 feet, but something here to control the breakout fill. Just was not a solid design. What happened is when we were out there testing, we looked at the area and it appeared that this lot line was further over this way. Once we got all the data together, the lot line and the testing, we had much less room than we thought we did in the field. We still tried to squeeze something in, did the best we could, but it wasn't good enough. It still was not a solid design, like I said. So then we went back out and tested in this area here. Still not the best soil, still high groundwater, not as high as over here. And then we feel that, or I feel, there's no we in this company, it's just me. But I feel that the Geomat is the best design here. It does raise this end up over here a little bit, and we have to have some fill. But given the size and the dimensions of this offset, I feel the Geomat is the best product for this site. This is a driveway. It's a gravel driveway, and the homeowner and I were talking, and they're probably going to put up some sort of barrier right here because you can't drive over a Geomat. So we're thinking just like a couple sections of split rail fence or whatever they want, so that you just, no one drives over or plows snow over it, something like that. Let's see. I got Jim's comments here.
You're going for a 2 foot groundwater offset?
A 2 foot reduction in groundwater, yes, down to 2 feet. Yep.
All right, let me read Jim's
as
notes
provided
and
by
then
the
we'll ask
general
board
union.
for comments. 149 to
What's that?
Let me read Jim's comments and then we'll ask the board for comments.
Okay, go ahead.
149 to Hadawin, the applicant is looking to replace a failed sewage disposal system. Soil testing was conducted and a sieve analysis was used to determine percolation rate because the soil was wet. The site has a number of restrictions which prevents a fully compliant sewage disposal system from being designed. Seasonal high groundwater table, small lot size, high perk rate, wetlands. The applicant is proposing the use of a Geomat leach field. The system has design benefits for challenging lots. Low profile and reduced breakout grading if the leaching area is pressure dosed, which this will be. Due to the limited area for the system, there are wetlands in the back of the house. The leaching area design will be close to the lot line, requiring a wall for the system fill. The design will require local upgrade approvals for the use of a sieve analysis, offset of the leaching area to property line, 10 foot required, 3 foot proposed, and the reduction of the offset to groundwater for the leaching area, 4 feet required, 2 foot proposed. The plan requires a variance to your local regulations for the offset of fill to the lot line, 10 feet for required, 1 foot provided, and approval of the use of a retaining wall. The house is served by town water, and given the limited land area, this design represents a reasonable solution for the site. Kevin Davis, do you have any questions, comments?
Yeah. I'm assuming north is up. What's the northeast corner elevation? Is that 90 feet? And then the contour, is that the closest contour is 91? And then what's the amount of fill over top of it?
Nominal fill, like a foot.
A foot? Okay.
So,
and then there's the concern that you said you can't, because there's a driveway right next door to it of some kind. You said that they were just going to put up a fence.
No, I'm sorry. I should let you finish. Go ahead.
You said that there was a gravel area or something that they were near or something. I guess I misheard you.
So there's a driveway right here. So this is the paved driveway where they come in the garage. And so this is elevation 95. Then there's a retaining wall right here.
Got it.
And so that drops down to 91, 92, as you can see there.
Yep.
And this is a gravel drive where they park their boat or they'll park an extra car there. So you're not supposed to drive over the Geomat. So we just talked about me and the homeowner just talked about putting in, like just a split rail fence, just, 5 feet off the system, just to ensure that people don't drive on it.
Does the board feel that there should be a more permanent solution to make sure that they don't plow snow or drive over it or something like that? Because otherwise then we have another failed septic.
I think these are served by maintenance agreements where they're not? Geomat doesn't have a maintenance agreement?
No, the only thing, you were right about the Presby too. The only thing that have the maintenance agreements anymore are the active ones. So your fast jets and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we should definitely include some sort of barrier that will eliminate the possibility of someone mistakenly driving over the system.
Yeah, completely.
So I'll
think
put it
we-
on the next plan, but what's more permanent than a split rail fence?
I don't know.
What do you
Big
have in
rock.
mind?
Big rocks.
Boulders. Yeah, boulders. You'll find some when you're digging. It's okay.
No, I know we're going to find some, but I just don't understand. I mean, you're affecting the aesthetics. Rocks are going to take up more room than there are, and it actually doesn't. It takes away the amount of room that you can plow snow. I think it was something that I'm doing preemptively, and I don't know why. Something that the homeowner's going to put up there something that looks somewhat nice, a couple split rail fences, rather than dropping a couple of rocks in their driveway.
Yeah, put something on the plan that we can look at. That'd be great.
Okay.
Dan
Well,
Kane,
I'm
any
coming back
questions?
because of a.
Dan Kane,
Am
any
I
questions?
coming back because of the barrier that I'm putting up there? The barrier has to be approved?
We're asking the board for comments right now.
Yeah.
Dan Kane, any questions?
I'll be interested to hear if you have any abutters. I agree. I'm looking at a picture right now from Google, and it certainly is. It appears to be very easy to continue driving right down that gravel driveway and onto the proposed leaching area. I definitely think something there. I personally think a split rail fence would be perfectly fine there to accomplish the goal rather than rocks or something else. So I'm certainly not committed to that, but yes, some kind of a physical barrier there, I think it'd be important to be. It's just too easy. It looks like right now their boat's actually parked far down into where this leaching area would be. So it's easy to forget to, I can't drive down there anymore after it. So I certainly don't require rocks. I like the idea of split rail fence if that works and that's something you're willing to do. I don't see a need to necessarily hold things up for that. I don't have any questions other than that 1 foot offset from the property line is pretty darn close, but I just want to make sure the abutters are okay with it. I don't have any other questions.
Gino Fratelloni.
I think a fence will do it, and I don't think he has any problem.
Okay.
I understand that he does a good job.
Matt Wason.
Thank you.
Hey, Ted, I know you mentioned testing off the southeast corner of the house. But was there a reason you didn't look at just due east of the house, like the front yard, which looks relatively flat?
Space, water line, utilities.
Okay, I didn't see the utilities on there, so I wasn't sure if that's why.
Yeah, I didn't. That's one of Jim's comments to me. I got to throw the water line. The water line comes right in the center of the house.
Okay.
What was the groundwater?
In this area over here, it was 50 inches and 40 inches. So in the higher hole, in the lower hole it was 50 inches and 40 inches. But anyway, yeah, 50 and 40. Over on the side, it was 24 and 28 over when we did this. Here's the north arrow for people who want to reference directions, but I understand the front of the house.
And what did your sieve come back as?
Loamy sand, class 2. So that puts you at the 0.33. So it's equivalent to a 30. The application rate is equivalent to a 30-minute per inch soil.
Yeah, I mean, my comment is just the 2 foot groundwater offset just seems to be a little bit close given that you're in the 50 foot buffer.
I'm not in the 50 foot.
Oh, you're not? What's this? What's the line going through the system?
100 foot.
That's the 100. Okay. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to accept.
Are there any abutters who want to
Are
provide
there any
comment?
butters? Sorry. I don't believe there are.
So the Shays next door, I did notify them by certified mail, and I know him, so I called him and asked him if he wanted to get together and go over the plan. I haven't heard from him. So
I'd make a motion to approve this with the fence on the drawing and a 3-foot groundwater offset.
So can I reply to that? I mean, a 3-foot groundwater offset is going to add a foot to everything out here. And when you said you wanted a 2-foot groundwater offsetting, you wanted more than 2 feet, you were concerned with the 2 feet. It was because it was in the 50, but then it's not in the 50. So I thought that would erase that concern. 3-foot groundwater offset, you're going to add a foot to that wall. You're going to add a foot of fill over this thing. The cost of materials today, you're probably talking easily $7,000 for no benefit.
No reason at all.
I mean, given you're in the buffer there, I think there is a benefit. That's my opinion.
Okay, so I have something here that provides additional treatment. Well, if you can tell me what the benefit is, sell me on it. I'm not sold on it. I mean, we
play mental gymnastics every time you come before this board. I'm not doing it. No, but all right. Well, hear me out. We'll listen for a motion, and if there's a second, we'll take a vote, and that's it. All right.
No, because I need a chance to counteract the point that you made, or the motion that you made, that has no valid purpose, but it does increase the cost. I don't sit here and just throw the first thing on paper.
Protection for the groundwater, and since you're so close to the wetlands.
Okay, so tell me what the additional foot, what type of protection that provides, and maybe I'll agree with you. If you can tell me what benefit that provides to the wetland, then I'm listening.
It gives you a foot more filtration, and the effluent comes out cleaner.
So, can I rebut that?
Sure.
So it will be cleaner, or it may be cleaner. It may not be cleaner, but it's not going to be much. This is about as clean as you can get. This is going through, a 2-compartment settling tank. It's again pumped up to this system that the DEP has agreed provides additional treatment that over a conventional system. And I've talked to people. I don't just sit here and throw things on paper without, and I do this. I find out the science. I talk to people at the Colorado School of Mines, and they say that, a 2-foot groundwater offset is all that you need. All treatment that's going to occurs in the first 2 feet. I'm sorry, 99% of the treatment that occurs in the first 2 feet. So when we add another foot on it, we're not getting any additional treatment. We may feel better about ourselves, but there's no additional treatment. So now you're throwing $7,000 at least on top of this system, on top of the cost of your neighbor's system, for no treatment benefit.
Mr. Chairman, this is Gino. I made a motion to accept. There is no reason to make another motion.
Oh, is there a
I want to
second
see a
to Gino's
second.
motion?
I made the motion to
I'm
accept.
asking for a second, Gino.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, Kevin, Dan.
I guess my concern is just we're up to, I think, 4 or 5 variance approvals, and it's that proximity to the lot, the abutters, that we haven't heard from. And I know you've notified them, and I appreciate that, and you reached out to them personally. That's just always makes me a little nervous when you're talking about 1 foot away, we're adding fill along their property line. And I guess we can't force them to make comment.
Well, absence of being here and absence of comment could be considered in some places acceptance. No, it was very nice in the last hearing where the woman showed up and said that she was in support of it. That's nice. But, when you're notified by certified mail and your friend reaches out to you and says, hey, let's get together and talk about this, and they don't make the effort, you have to assume that they're going to be okay with it. And I think what it is, they know they're going to be in the same situation when their system fails.
Do we get green cards back for certified mail?
I haven't got the green card back, but that's not a requirement. The requirement is to notify them by certified mail and prove that you did notify them. Is not prove you don't have to prove that they received it.
Yeah, the receipts though.
I have my receipt here. Yeah, I do have a receipt saying that I did it.
We do have Gino's motion, if anyone would like to second that.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We have, let's see, Kevin Davis. You're muted.
Kevin Davis, yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Gina Farone, yes.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Weason.
Just to clarify, that motion included the fence, whatever barrier you're putting in.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Matt
I'm
Wason.
planning on putting in because I want to protect the system. Yeah. So
Perfect. Matt Wason, yes.
And Kevin Baker votes yes.
thank you. I'm sorry for the theatrics. I get a little excited when I sit here. I put
Yeah, you gotta stop
hours
that.
and hours into
That's
a
annoying.
plan, and somebody just comes in and
All right, next we have 7:30 public hearing, 9 Wellington Drive. Applicant is requesting to finish the basement. Do we have anyone here from 9 Wellington Drive? I don't know that we do. We'll continue the 9 Wellington Drive. Make a motion to continue the 9 Wellington Drive public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Kevin Davis,
Yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Yes.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason,
Matt Wason, yes.
and Kevin Baker votes yes.
Who was the second?
Kevin
I
Davis.
second.
With the Gino. It's fine.
Thank you.
7:35 public hearing, residential trash haulers. Just a quick update. We're gonna have to continue. I spoke with town council. She got all of our updates from the last meeting and the things we wanted to include and exclude from both from the main sections of the document as well as the addendums. She just didn't have time. She had a couple town meetings and she had some litigation to do. She hopes to have that to us next week so that we can go ahead and move forward with a public hearing for that. Once we have it in hand, we shouldn't hesitate to reach out to local area trash haulers to put that in front of them, get their opinions and invite them to the public hearing so we can have an open discussion about making sure it all is going to work for everybody. So motion to continue the 7:35 public hearing for residential trash haulers.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I
Second.
second.
All right, roll call vote. Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis, yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Yes, thank you.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason,
Matt Wason, yes.
Kevin Baker votes yes. 7:45, we have a discussion continued regarding the ID decision support tool. Matt, I didn't know if you had a screen share to do on this. You do? Okay. I think you have. Great.
You got it?
Yep.
Okay, so here's the updated, most recent data. Still BA2, Omicron BA2 is the most predominant agent, but a subvariant 2.12.1 is growing in frequency, and then 4 and 5 are on the horizon as potentials that will show up in our country, state, community at some point. Still a little unclear on 2.12.1 as to how different it might be. It looks like it is more transmissible, but probably equal in severity as 2. But it's always difficult with a variant that we don't have a lot of history on to understand exactly how bad it is when you catch it and how bad it might be over time. Our categories, ICU bed access remains below 80%. The CDC community level has been changed from medium to high by the CDC due to case rates. Our up-to-date vaccination numbers provided by Katrina, thank you, Katrina, are still right around 75% for people being up to date on their vaccinations. The public school prevalence from last Thursday came in at 5.2% overall for all of the schools. But of note, we need to come back to that on the discussion. The middle school came in at just over 10%, and all the other schools are sitting between 3.5 and 3.9%. Wastewater levels are creeping up further. They kind of took a dip, and now they're up around the 900s for both the north and south sites, and the 7-day averages are sitting right about 900. These are numbers we haven't seen for many months. I think about February is when they last hit this. We kind of saw them come up, a little tiny dip, and now they're starting to climb up again, which is concerning. To recall the kind of lines we've drawn here with 200 and 1,000 as the levels, those are not very scientific. It was just a starting point until we kind of further analyze this data, because we're not sure exactly what amount should be most concerning. But I would say, well, this is yellow on this chart. I feel like it's basically red at this point based upon the numbers and the escalation. And lastly, nothing around us that has any restrictions at this time. Just to go back up, I've added the Littleton 2-week case counts visually. This was going to be another one of the rows in our support tool, but I felt that just a snapshot of this number was not going to be very helpful to us, because there shouldn't be just a color associated necessarily with a certain number of cases. For me, it's more about what are they trending. So this is a 2-month history of the 2-week case counts. So you can see that we sustained less than 20 cases for a stretch of time, and now we are over 45 cases in a 2-week period. So that's more than a doubling. I would say if this had a color code, I would flag this as red, simply because of, again, the escalation that has occurred. I think discussion, I've left the level of concern at this very top of the tool blank, because I don't want to be the sole person trying to grade the board's kind of feeling of concern around the levels. So I feel that should be a discussion topic perhaps. And then we've currently just made a recommendation about strongly suggesting people wear their masks out in public. But I think we also need to discuss the schools. Any questions thus far?
Question.
Go ahead, Dan.
The question is, as soon as that we have everybody vaccinated, would be feel much more secure.
So Matt, I would love to have a conversation with you. I've worked with Katrina for the last 2 years on gathering the data and automating that. I would love to figure out how we can get this to some sort of automated drawing as much as possible and reduce the amount of time, because this is probably a good bit of time you're putting into putting this together.
In all honesty, most of it's just as a side note, most of it actually is automated. I'm pulling the data directly from the state files. So it's
right.
It's auto calculating most everything. But yes, I agree. Future steps are to still try to get it as automatic as possible and posted online.
Yep.
Does it do the colors automatically?
Yeah, that's easy.
No, I'm talking about okay. So if you'd be open to having a conversation about that offline,
you bet.
Dan?
All right. So we've talked about kind of the limitations of any tool. Currently looking at Metro West, we kind of in our weird little spot here in Littleton, where we're part Metro Boston, part Central Mass, part Metro West. We're kind of right at the intersection of all of them. Our ICU bed status isn't terrible compared to where we've been in the past, so they're still relatively high. However, if we look at our med surge capacity, it is near zero in practical numbers for our 3 areas. So for Central Mass, right now we're at 95% med surge utilization, which is near zero availability in practice. Those numbers, simply because of the variability of how they're reported, whether it's physical bed spaces versus staffed beds. Each of the hospital, there is no standard of how they report it. So a 95% occupancy rate is basically 100% in practice. Metro Boston's at 95.6. Metro West, we're at 91.2, which is a little bit better, but our med surge capacity right now is limited. So great, we have ICU beds, but we still have across the board, not simply from COVID, but our hospital availability is still relatively limited, which is concerning. I know we're going to get to our school discussion, which I think is probably the biggest piece, and the CDC recommendation. We have 7 counties. 3 of the largest counties in Massachusetts right now are in the red per CDC standard. So,
yeah, I agree. The the wastewater numbers creeping up is concerning. I know they did take a little dip and they're coming back up, but this may be, the the surge that we sort of thought was coming based on the last peak in the wastewater, so that the next increased level of cases will probably be here in 2 to 4 weeks, maybe somewhere in that range. I think that's our leading indicator, that and the public school data. And I just would like to add that, the case counts coming out of the schools are by no means an accurate reflection of the actual number of cases in the schools, just because of all the home testing and the folks that decide to, not report their testing. I can say that I am disappointed in the schools, in the regard that we sat here in February and we had a conversation about a prevalence rate. And that conversation, after many, many long discussions, came back to the point to where, oh yes, and if we get to 4%, we are going to take action. We're going to use different mitigation strategies, and using Matt's terms, pull these levers, that lever. I did have a conversation with Dr. Clenchy yesterday in regards to what's going on and what are they doing about it. And I think they sent letters out with a strong recommendation to middle school families and Shaker Lane families. But to my knowledge, that's the extent of it. I don't know next steps and what to do. I'd love to have a conversation with the board and the school committee. Unfortunately, the school committee won't have a chair for another 8 days. That's certainly, they're sort of in flux post-election and waiting to reorganize. So I think it's a really tough decision. I think I would hate to see what happens in the next 3 to 4 weeks in the schools, should we continue on this trajectory, given the knowledge that we have about the wastewater leading indicator. I'll open up that discussion with what can we do to help the schools in their mitigation, and how can we stop the spread within the schools. I did see a COVID update online from Katrina, some slides, just basically saying at a 10% prevalence rate, there's 2 COVID cases in every classroom at the middle school, which would render every single one of the students in that classroom a close contact, and then what are they doing? So I'm really concerned.
So I just threw it in there in case people hadn't seen the numbers. This is directly from the Littleton Public Schools site. I agree with what you're saying, Kevin. Back in February, I feel like we were pretty clear in asking that they develop plans and put something in place so that we knew when we hit a certain threshold, what actions were they going to take. I'm particularly concerned that this data came out last Thursday, correct? And I'm not aware of any action other than communication. And we'd said that at the time, 4% prevalence was going to be our threshold for discontinuing mask flexibility when that was on the table for discussion. And at the time, I believe I recommended that they set additional thresholds at higher levels that necessitated such things such as an emergency meeting. I think when your numbers hit 10% prevalence, you should be having an emergency meeting. And I don't think that a changeover of the school board membership is an excuse enough to not be considering taking some action, whether that's requiring masks, whether that's switching to test and stay if they're not doing that, whether that's increasing testing. I don't know. There are lots of, as you mentioned, there are lots of levers to pull, but I'm not aware of a plan that the schools have developed for what to do in this situation. I'll also point out that every single school, as I said, is over 3.5%. And we know that this would not include cases where families came back from holiday and did their own tests at home and found positives. So it doesn't take much for all of these to be at a 4% rate for district wide.
In regards to a plan, we may have a school committee member in the audience. Justin, is that you or is that Allison?
Should have it.
I don't know. Dave, did you just promote? Did you just promote Allison?
I allowed talking. They're still muted.
They're still muted. Yeah, maybe they're not there. Well, they can raise their hand later, I guess, if they want to talk about it.
I do know.
You can put them back in the audience, Dave. Thanks. So, Kevin, Dan, Gino, what are your thoughts on all this?
I agree with you. Mr. Chairman, I do agree with you. The question is, I'm afraid after the school is closed, if we don't warn them now, what's going to happen after the school closed? The kids are going to be running around. The parents will say, oh, nothing's going to happen. You're right. We should have the board and also the school to get involved. Maybe they can say something to their parents. We can't afford to increase. We were doing well before, but it seems like I'm surprised to hear that. That's too much. And the young kids, what are they going to do?
Thanks.
So the wastewater is usually a 2 to 3 week leading indicator on where things are going to go. And right now it's headed up and I don't see it plateauing anywhere from I'm looking at it online right now too, Matt. And I think if the if the school system had already said that a 4% thing would end or change masking in the schools and things like that, then I think they need to honor that and try to figure out what their next thing is. I think you're right. Having some sort of emergency meeting at 10%, I think you should have it at like 8 or whatever. So that way, if you
should have
see
been at 4. It should have been at 4.
Yeah,
Right.
I wasn't there for the meeting. I didn't hear the number, so I apologize, Mr. Chairman. But a 10% number is just too many. I read the same thing, and there should be an action plan coming out of the schools saying what they're doing for each of the schools to keep the kids safe. I understand there's a vaccination rate and all that kind of good stuff, but I don't know what the vaccination rate is in each of the schools. So I know they used to produce that number, but I don't know what it is anymore.
We're here to protect the children too and the elderly. So let's see.
No, I'm there. But as far as that goes, there should be something going on right now. And I have seen no communication coming out of the school saying, here's what you should be doing. And the wastewater line is headed up again. So,
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, we should have a meeting with the school committee or either them with the superintendent.
I think the earliest we could have a meeting and get it posted would be Monday at this point. It
is an emergency.
Would we have a quorum?
Yeah, I'll be there.
I'm available at some point.
I'm available too.
Matt and Dan.
I'm looking at my schedule now.
Okay.
Yes, I could be available.
I can
My
as well on
calendar's
Monday.
My calendar is free on Monday as well.
Okay, I'll ping Dr. Clenchy and I'll just send an email to this general school committee inbox and see what time Monday they can make it.
Should say they should have a vice chair. So even the loss of the chair, their current chair without reorg, they still have a vice chair who should be functioning in the chair capacity.
Okay.
Certainly looking at that number, I don't have any kids at the middle school at the moment. I do know that they have postponed their middle school play
Yes.
out of concern. But I've not heard any from my middle school contacts, parents and youth, any other change in day-to-day operations within the middle school. Certainly that 10% number, we no longer have authority over. We have rescinded the mandate. So any discussions we had were, really verbal plan. I agree with everybody else. I'm disappointed that the school nurses and the superintendents and the principals haven't taken some further action. I certainly know that, while most youth who become infected tend to have relatively minor symptoms, that does not mean all. They certainly, as a population, their risk of serious illness is less than adults or elderly, but they still exist. But simply looking at a 10% of the school being out of school for some length of time, that's a huge educational impact, which I would think most parents would be concerned with. And having 48 positive middle schoolers in their community, and in the middle school community, and then in our residential community, that simply is a significant vector to those who are unvaccinated. We're certainly seeing that the newest variant of the BA2, the 2.1.2, I believe, is actually more contagious, and vaccinations are not quite as effective against. So we've got, some new agents. We've got a lot of vectors walking around who are middle schoolers in our community. It's a concern that, even from simply keeping kids in seats in school, that's a big hunk of the school who are currently out of school for some length of time. I think a meeting, I'm disappointed that they did not take independent action. It seems a 10% number for me would be scary. If anytime 10% of my student population is out of the building for some reason in a community like Littleton, as an educational leader, I would be incredibly concerned.
Yes.
And if I knew what the reason was, and I could do something to try to make sure that 10% didn't become 11, 12, 13, 14%, I'd be taking action. I would love to find out kind of their decision tree to get to where they, what actions they chose to take or chose not to take, and what the rationale was for it, just so we can all be on the same page.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the definition of vaccinated and up to date for children 12 and older includes a booster. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
12 and older. Yes.
Yep.
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah, they should have been eligible for vaccinations. At most middle schoolers, I think, at this point would probably have had their 2 rounds plus, I think it's 5 months.
I just don't know what the rate. I just don't know what the rate is for the booster, Dan.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure either. We haven't.
Yep.
Our vaccination data out of the school basically went away as soon as the waivers requirement through DESE went away. That sharing of information basically stopped at that point, because there was no longer a regulatory need, I guess is probably the best way of saying it, from the school department to continue to monitor and share.
So I don't have the breakdown by age for our own calculated up to date, but the report from Jim is that the 12 to 15 age group is at a 49% boosted. So depending on how many people have been vaccinated for less than 5 months, they would drop out of that. But otherwise, 49% is not a very high number for our boosted individuals.
So short of reinstating a emergency regulation mask mandate for municipal buildings and town-owned buildings, I don't see anything happening tonight to help stop the spread in the schools. Would you all concur with that?
I unfortunately don't think we have the ability to issue an emergency order without select board concurrence.
Mhm.
Regulation requires posting, public hearing,
Right.
and then public posting of the new regulation in a newspaper of record. Or the school committee could certainly meet and act independently
Mhm.
immediately. As soon as they could meet, the superintendent should be able to act independently immediately. So I mean, certainly as far as speed, superintendent could act 0700 tomorrow morning.
Mhm.
School committee could act within 48 hours of posting their meeting. Same with us, and along with we have select board concurrence. So I think at this
most
point, it's
expeditiously, if we were to contact Dr. Clenchey and say, here are some recommendations, would you please consider putting them into place? What would that list of recommendations look like?
If he does it, that'd be okay. I mean,
It would show some
right,
good faith in actually trying to
right.
get this thing under control down there.
Yeah, I don't know well enough what they have right now. Like, I don't know if they have tests to stay for close contacts or whether they should stay out. As I see prevalence rates come up that quickly, I would encourage them to either have test and stay or start having close contacts not come in. That's hard. In a place with 10%, I think they should strongly consider masking for those kids in that school to try to reduce the spread as quickly as possible. And depending on what time he gets this data, I realize it's Friday, not Thursday, because it was updated on May 6th. I would strongly encourage him to look at these numbers as quickly as possible on Friday and potentially make a decision Friday. Because if they've gone up further, that would put every single school above 4% probably. And I'm just worried about where the middle school will be this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just from my home life, I'm told 30 kids get called down to the office every morning and sent home.
and I have a feeling that probably the nurses and the principals and superintendent probably have these run numbers. Certainly the nurse's office would probably have these as a true running total, not a weekly report. I would think they would have a sense of where they are right now without waiting for Friday afternoon, but that's just an assumption.
That's a good point, Dan, because we'd also previously talked about escalation rates and debate about when it hits a certain number or when it goes over a certain doubling or something like that. That would also be cause for immediate discussion.
Yep.
So if we were to make some recommendations, if I was to send an email to Dr. Clenchey tonight, just suggesting, they continue to follow their, continue open windows, use HEPA filters, social distancing, plan for dealing with people returning to school on day 6 when they're potentially still contagious, moving the things they can move outdoors, and talk about masking if prevalence rates are going to be over, the 4% threshold that we set out months ago. I realize the variant situation has changed. It's potentially more contagious. And, we really don't know the long-term effects. So as it may not be as severe in the short term, who are any of us to say down the road, if your child has a heart issue, that it's not going to exacerbate that. So if it's okay with the board, or whoever's chair at the end of this meeting, should craft an email to Dr. Clenchey and get that ball rolling and let's get a meeting on the books for Monday. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
And that addresses the school. And what about the community? We still have kind of a standing, strong recommendation for folks to wear masks. Are we comfortable with that? Staying at that strong recommendation?
I mean, I said a couple weeks ago that, with like one of the next things we should be looking at, should the wastewater levels continue to increase, would be to visit those grocery stores and pharmacies, sort of the essential places that folks have to go, and offer them some support, maybe some signage, and actually say, either put in a requirement that people coming in wear masks, or have their management team just be on board with policing that. Because I don't think mandating something that can't be policed or that people aren't bought into is effective. I think we've learned that. What would you suggest?
I think most of the elderly, older than kids from school, most of them wear a mask when they go to the store. Maybe some of them don't. You can give them the choice, but the question is, right now we are concerned about the kids. That's where the problem is. And the elderly always stay away from other people, and sometimes they put the mask on wherever they go. We got to give them a little better leeway. But right now, if it wasn't for the kids having this problem, we won't even be talking about it. It's the kids that we are concerned.
Say one of the challenges with trying to do something official is that when we had, truthfully, relatively good data for quite a long time, at this point, we're looking at our Maven numbers for town cases. I believe we're at 47 for this past week. The challenge is Maven only captures data that is PCR tests through an official testing site. So either a testing site, a physician's office, a hospital, that is the only place that's capturing that data. So every at-home test that's positive doesn't go into that mix. Every symptomatic person who chooses not to test but is responsible and stays home does not go into that mix. So as our testing sites have shut down, as folks have gotten more comfortable with the situation, more comfortable with at-home testing has become much more available and easy to access, that 47 number, we don't really know what that represents. What percentage of positive cases in town does that 47 represent? Just like our 46 cases in 2 weeks at the schools, we have no idea what the overlap is between that Maven 47 and that school reported 46. Mm-hmm. Some of those are going to be pool testing, so it may catch some of them. We simply don't know how big an overlap that is. So we could potentially have 90 cases in town right now reported. Never mind the unreported. Or it could be down to maybe that 47 is accurate. We've captured all 46 school cases in that number 47. We simply don't know. But that where we really kind of hung our hat on those Maven numbers before, they're not as meaningful and representative of where we are. So from a public health education piece, when we were showing we're at 100 cases per 10,000 per 2 weeks, and we could get very relatively detailed statistics and numbers of what our status was. The numbers aren't as valuable. This is a lot more art than science, unfortunately, at the moment. And we had some challenges with the science getting buy-in from community members and community leaders. This is more the art of public health, the art of medicine, rather than the science of it. And I'm concerned that I think the recommendations are there. I think a mandate, my gut, my art of healthcare is leaning, you know what, we are probably in as challenging a position as we were a few months ago, but the science side is harder to show that. And therefore it's harder to put something solid in place when it's intuition, because that's really where we are right now. A lot of this is looking at wastewater numbers. We're looking at well, we know what the school numbers are and a 10%. We're looking at lots of stuff that's suggestive. We're not looking at anything that we can really hang our hat on of going, here is something concrete, measurable, representative of what our status is. So I would love to say, let's be more proactive. And the 30-year healthcare provider in me is saying, yep, it's time. One of the smartest folks I ever worked with. If you're thinking that hard about it, you should probably do it. Should I give it? Shouldn't I give it? Should I take that interaction? Shouldn't I? If you're working that hard trying to decide, you know what? You probably should be taking some action and not trying to talk yourself out of the action. But we're in a place where that's not really going to be practical. And I'm not sure how to get that buy-in. I'm not sure how to get folks wrapped back into self-motivation for mitigation strategies, distancing, masking, vaccination rates. We still have, that 16 to 19 population vaccination rate has not changed in almost a year.
I know.
Our older than 75 number has not changed in almost a year. So we're kind of plateaued with some levels of mitigation. I'm not sure how we can make that any better, other than messaging. And we're back to the same place of how do we more effectively message clinical intuition.
Okay, let's see if we can make a meeting with the school committee and the superintendent.
Should we meet with the select board too?
And also,
You
it
think
might be a good idea.
Because they meet on Mondays, right?
Yeah,
Might be able to squeeze us in on their agenda, and then LCTV can kill three birds with one stone.
you might, Mr. Chairman, you want to have an executive meeting with the selectmen too, maybe half an hour?
I think we can all just talk about it in an open meeting. Should be fine.
Okay, I'll leave it up to you. Yeah.
Dan, thank you for your comments. I agree with that. That's why I kind of put this tool together myself to try to help me feel guided when I get those instincts. I'm sitting here looking at that top row of level of concern, and I'm trying to decide how do I not make that red personally, simply because of the trends. I know the rest of it doesn't look very red, but boy, it sure feels red. Our case counts are assuredly undercounted. And if no other action, can't believe I'm going to say it, but do we need to start meeting more frequently simply to talk about this, to make sure we're watching the data and taking action more rapidly? If we don't feel confident in making a big step today, which is fine. I don't know how I feel about it, but what about next week? Can we afford to wait 2 weeks? The schools aside, if we meet and talk about the schools, for the rest of the community, when do we decide that we need to be actually just reviewing data like this more regularly?
I mean, we've always, during the past 2 years, there have been times where we met weekly. One meeting would just be a COVID meeting.
Right.
And then the next would be public hearings, septic systems, whatever else we have to do. And if we had some emergency COVID stuff, we talk about that too. I don't think we're at weekly meetings yet. I think we have to sort of see what comes out of Monday, because like Gino said, if it weren't for the 10% rate in the middle school, this wouldn't be the conversation that it is right now. Although we would be looking at the wastewater numbers and seeing them spiking and maybe put out, does it even matter if you put out another press release? Does it even matter if you make another strong recommendation? And I think that, it potentially it should be a conversation we have with the select board too. Obviously we have zero resources. We have no administrative assistant, and we need the backing of the people that can help. and we're a strong community. There are a lot of good people in this community, and everybody wants to help and everybody wants to do the right thing. And I think that if we can sit down and have a conversation, voicing our concerns and our recommendations, and see how we can all sit down and see eye to eye on it for the greater good, that might be the path of least resistance in actually getting something done that makes a difference. That's what I think. So let me see what we can put together for Monday night. And I will get back to you guys right away. I will craft an email to Dr. Clenchy, and I'll BCC everyone on it so we don't violate any open meeting laws.
Mr. Chairman, do you need a motion for this?
No, I don't think so.
No?
Yeah, it's just a discussion.
Okay, we can make a motion for discussion. I think it's better, safer.
Okay, go ahead.
I make a motion to have a discussion to the selectmen and to the board
We'll have a
of the
public
school
hearing.
committee. Okay, about this event that we're having over 10%.
Okay. I'll second that. Roll call vote. Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis, yes.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Yes, Gino, yes.
Matt Wason,
Wason, yes.
and Kevin Baker votes yes. I'll keep you posted on the timing for Monday night. We'll have to consult with LCTV too. So, was there anything else on the ID decision support tool, or was that enough for now? And we'll continue to hone that. Matt and Kevin, I encourage you to get together and see how we can make things more efficient, especially with the lack of an administrative assistant to handle.
Will do.
Some of those things. All right. So next we're talking about the potential regulation requiring treatment for sewage disposal systems within 100 feet of the wetlands. I have an email into Jim regarding the measurements of the effluent of the different types of systems between the Geomat and the Perkrite, Presby, Fast and Jet, what the measurements are of the effluent that comes out of those systems, and then what the Title V requirements are within 100 feet of the wetlands. So we can put all that data in front of us and see what action we should take on this potential new regulation and what the wording might look like. I think we need to have those facts and figures in front of us.
Do we also want to get, I agree, do we also want to get somebody from the Conservation Commission to see if there's some sort of language that would help them as well?
We briefly met with them. It certainly doesn't hurt to get them involved in it. I think we should have a conversation once Jim gets back with that data, and then loop in ConsCom once we have our language crafted, maybe. If that's all right.
Yep. Sounds good.
I don't know if there's an opportunity. Clearly, there are differing viewpoints on the effectiveness of the variety of these systems that we're talking about, from the experts who are designing and installing, and from the experts who are working to protect things. Is there a way, do we need a report that's perhaps produced by a third party from those that kind of helps us all be on the same page about the effectiveness? And
well, it will be, there's a company down on the Cape, I think, that tests like all the systems.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And they take the measurements of the levels of, nitrogen and all the different things that are in the effluent when it comes out of each different system.
If you,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So if we can just get those, the test results, and then see what the Title V thresholds are, within 100 feet of the wetlands, and then decide what we as Littleton need to show within 100 feet of the wetlands that will help us determine what types of systems to
A better effect.
focus on. Yeah, that'll have a better effect on the wetlands, being that our aquifers are drinking water and all the water that goes into the wetlands is basically turning out to be our drinking water.
So what I was also going to say is maybe reaching out to, I mean, I could reach out to UMass Lowell or UMass Amherst into the civil engineering department, which would handle, or maybe have somebody that's in there that does a Title V type stuff and has some research on that. And if they have recommendations there, I have no problem reaching out to universities.
Yeah, I mean, Jim will know that stuff probably
Oh,
off
okay.
the top of his
Fine.
head. So
Cool.
Dan,
But thank you for your
Kevin,
effort.
do we have a
go ahead, Dan.
do we have a consulting engineer for the town or for the board? Certainly, I know in previous relationships in communities that we've had basically an independent consulting engineer. So if there's been a discrepancy between what a applicant is requesting or a complex project where really our expertise might not be there to be able to adequately assess it, that we can actually have an independent
A peer
engineer review plans and be able to provide feedback, not minimizing Jim's expertise, but he's not a civil engineer, he's not an environmental engineer, that be able to provide meaningful, thoughtful, independent feedback that isn't an applicant or, you know, a sanitarian kind of piece. Do we have any relationship with basically
I know that-
town council, but for a civil engineer?
Right. No, the planning board does have someone that they use for peer reviews. I don't know, and I'm sure they are qualified to handle civil engineering matters like septic systems, because they, you know, and then Conscom has wetlands delineations peer reviewed all the time. So I'm sure there's someone out there, and I can look into who that might be, and they might be able to guide us on this language as well. So
I think that might be helpful, and just in general, as certainly as tonight was an example that, you know, we had while I would not normally in the past have gone, this is something that I would think need to be peer reviewed. You know, for most residentials usually aren't as complex that you would expect to peer review. And I'm not suggesting that tonight's was, but it does kind of suggest of, as we're looking at bigger projects in town, we're looking at, you know, the IBM, we're looking at, you know, the train station here, we're looking at larger projects, more compressed projects in a community without a centralized sewer system, that I can see us having cases where the expertise of this board in very precise civil and environmental engineering projects are simply beyond our scope,
Right.
and having that external resource now, or at least having it in our back pocket when we need it, is probably going to be, rather than the moment of going,
Right.
this is beyond us. Now we need to try to figure out who we can get and then start the peer review process. Is going to be a lot harder than being proactive with it.
yeah, I understand.
We need to make sure we have the phone the friend option, because right now I don't think we do.
Contact info, right? So I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing regarding the potential regulation requiring treatment for sewage disposal systems within 100 feet of the wetlands. We'll continue that until our next meeting in hopes that we get A, the peer review information, and B, the data from Jim regarding the effluent, as well as what Title V it requires within 100 feet of the wetlands. So
I second it.
roll call vote. Kevin Davis,
Kim Davis, yes.
Dan Kane.
Dan Kane, yes.
Sorry, I go out of order. Gino Fratelloni,
Yes, Gina Ferraro, yes.
Matt Wason,
Now, Jason, yes.
and Kevin Baker votes yes.
Before we move on to the next topic, points of discussion. First, I kind of agree with what Dan alluded to earlier. Not having the plans in advance, not having a plan that I can actually look at and read myself.
Mhm.
I'm not wild about that. So I would propose, and I don't know if it needs to be a motion or if the rule already stands and we're just dodging it, but I feel like we shouldn't have a motion or vote on something where we don't have the plans already in hand.
Okay, so we want the plans how far in advance? We want them at least 2 days in advance of the meeting?
I feel like that's when we would have to publish the agenda for the public notice anyway. So I feel like you can't get on the agenda unless we already have the plans.
Yeah, like, okay.
What does the building department require? Or what does the planning board require for plans submitted?
Oh, I don't know exactly, but I mean, I'm sure
48
you have to
hours.
have a full application with several sets and copies of different plans. I think this is just a little pain we're feeling, given we don't have an administrative assistant right now. I'm assuming there's a pile of plans and a number of PDFs floating around in inboxes upstairs on the 3rd floor there that just are in no man's land right now. So,
Fair enough.
I bet if we said something like, you know what, we're not going to have any more public hearings about septic systems until we get an administrative assistant to handle this, I think that might get somebody's attention and maybe expedite the process of having someone help us.
Go for it, Mr. Chairman.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
I like Dan's comment. I know I was asking for where's our packet, and I didn't get anything back. So I kind of want a packet before I vote again.
Sorry, Dino, go ahead.
That makes sense. Yeah, he's right.
The next point, just two other small things. The next I wanted to bring up is that I think we should think about is about alternatives, because 2 of those today I felt like I would have liked to have seen an alternative plan created. I'm not an expert. I understand that they are the experts, but we invariably ask about, well, what about X or what about Y? And if it's just an answer of, well, that's, the slope's too much. Well, how much is too much, and what would it take? I know there's a cost accrued with that as well, but what would it take to see an alternative? And perhaps it's something that's tied to, and this is my other point, is as these list of variance requests get longer and longer, should we include it with our 100-foot offset discussion where we say, oh, and also if your list of variances is exceeding this certain number, you should be prepared to provide an alternative plan. Expect higher requirements or something like that. I don't know exactly how to incorporate, but something where you say, obviously, if it's a vanilla project, don't waste your time drawing up something else. But if you're going to come to us and ask for, say, a number 4 variances or more, you are expected to show us an alternative so that we can discuss it and try to figure out with cost increases what the best thing to do for our waterways and community.
Standard engineering practice is an analysis of alternatives, and that's what all engineers go through and do. I'm surprised they didn't have some sort of, an alternative ready to go for those most challenging ones. I agree with Matt on this. There should be something.
In the past, Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Yeah.
In the past, when somebody comes and says, oh, you have to have 100 feet away. In many, many cases, we give the variance, whether it's not going to be like 60 feet, it could be 20 feet, 30 feet. Maybe the question is, in some lots, they have no choices when they put a new septic system. And then what you're going to have, because the variance is allowed if it makes sense. All depends on how they build it. Otherwise, you have attorney from the other side without attorney, and they take us to court. And then the judge is going to say, you know something, you should allow the variance as long as it makes sense. You can't say it's got to be 100 feet. You can talk as much as you want to. The question we did in the past. And I understand that somebody, without mentioning any names, say, oh, Gino started. Well, the question has been in the Board of Health for a long, long time. And I saw a very small lot, and they had and they put in a new septic system that they pay for so much money, and they can't lose the house because they've been there for a long time. You have to adjust. And there is a way you can adjust. You can put a swell, you know what I mean, a big swell, so the water will not go further down to the wetland. There is a way we can do it. Mm-hmm. You cannot consistently say, oh, absolutely 100 feet. We're going to have lawsuit, up to lawsuit. And this is for the new members. You have to have The only way you can eliminate it is when the sewage treatment will come up in place. Everybody will be able to use it. Then you have no problem. But it's going to take 10 years before you have, in 2 years, you have the sewage. But then it takes so much to put in every street. Everybody would like to have the sewage. I have 6 customers that I have to tell to the town hall that they like to have the sewage treatment. They have to have a T on the street so they can connect it very easily before they let the pipe going through.
Right.
And then they say, oh my God, we forgot to put that a T. And then the people that have the pipe and the sewage treatment in place, then the town will exceed some money and it will help. And then you and I will be out of business.
It's okay with me. We have a 8:10, we're running late, public hearing regarding the MOU to adopt the approved memorandum of understanding for the public health coordinator that we looked at. Kevin, I know you didn't see this. We could do a couple things. We could vote on it, or we could, wait. I think we probably should vote on it, and you might have to abstain. I think we have a quorum maybe on that, unless you have input on it. Dan, what do you think we should do?
Well, we haven't, I believe as we last had it, is that we had thoughts and concerns about the grading and what would happen with, so we have not seen anything since anything regarding this or anything in paper since our last meeting.
Oh, I
so
had
what we
emailed
should
that
do
out to you when I got it from Alex.
I don't remember seeing anything. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope I merely missed it in my email. But
you just delete my email.
You did send it back out and asked for comment, but you said you would send it to the select board for approval. So is it our next step or their next step?
Yeah, I think it's our next step to put forth a document that we're happy with, and then, put it in front of them. That's.
okay, I personally think I misunderstood that we had our concerns. It was going to go back to town hall to see if it could be regraded and clarify that language around the memorandum could be terminated by either side with 10 days notice. Okay, well, what would that mean though in practice that on day 11 for the public health coordinators, because it wasn't terminate the position or the person, it was terminate the agreement. Then how would that affect operations of the health department at that point on day 11? And so I missed if we actually got feedback from personnel board, select board, town administrator, or town council about any of those comments, concerns.
Yeah, let me dig up my. Okay, so upon termination, the employee would report only to the board. I can't believe you didn't get this email. All right, I'm going to resend this to everybody right now. Do you want to just continue this until our next meeting, and that way Kevin can have a chance to read through it as well?
I'm sorry, he's a member of the board. There's been no action on it while it's continued hearing. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think he should be abstaining from it. I mean, at this point, he's picking up in the middle of a hearing, but it's not necessarily, it hasn't been decided. It's an ongoing discussion.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there's a official stance on it. It's not the Supreme Court where he's going to be in the middle of a case.
Yeah.
I think this is,
well,
having input and a vote seems still reasonable for a board member.
So upon termination, the employer would report only to the board. As you can imagine, this can be administratively challenging. I've seen it done a number of ways, not all of which are successful. In the event that the agreement terminates, let's talk about the best way to provide oversight and support this employee. It would be most likely to involve the board designating the chair or another member to act as day-to-day supervisor for purposes of approving vacation days, periodic check-ins. Let me send you guys this email. I'll just forward it over.
Kevin, I think I gave you my email address. If not, I'll give it to you offline.
Okay. So motion to continue the public hearing on the MOU. Is
Make a motion to continue.
there a second?
Second.
Second.
Roll
Third.
call vote. Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis, yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Yes, Chair Perrone, yes.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
and Matt Wason.
Matt Wason, yes.
And this email is coming. Sure it's attached. Sorry. So next we have administrative matters, the minutes of April 13th. Did everybody have a chance to read through Dan's very excellent and thorough minutes from April 13th, 2020? I'd like to entertain a motion.
I don't think I was present. Was I present then? Or I was away?
Yeah,
I don't believe you were there for that
No,
one.
you weren't.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second. Roll call vote. Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis, present.
I think you just need to abstain from the,
Abstain.
yeah. Gino, you'll abstain. Dan Kane,
All right, Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason,
Matt Wason, yes.
and Kevin Baker votes yes. Next, the reorganization of the board. It's tradition that post-election, the board reorganizes. So I'll entertain a motion to do so.
I don't recall. Is that a motion for all three or one at a time?
One at a time.
In that case, I make a motion to elect Kevin Baker as chairperson.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis, yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Gino Perrone, yes.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
and Matt Wason,
Matt Wason, yes.
and Kevin Baker votes yes.
You're doing a great job at it. I appreciate it.
I'll make a motion to appoint Matt Wason as vice chair.
Second.
Vote in a second. Roll call vote. Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis, yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Gino Perrone, yes.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
and Matt Wason.
Matt Wason, yes.
So we need to do the clerk. I'm going to make a motion to nominate Kevin Davis as the clerk. Because I know, Kevin Davis, that in the next couple weeks, as we get our administrative assistant together, you have a way to get the transcript from these meetings and turn them into minutes very quickly and efficiently.
We should be able to do that. Zoom has that ability.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Kevin Davis
Yes.
and Gino Fratelloni.
Yeah.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason,
Matt Wason, yes.
and Kevin Baker votes yes. Correspondence. I only saw one email, which now I really know not all the emails are getting through to us. It was, I don't know if I should name names. I can read the body of the email. So I can find it. Subject: response to rising COVID rates. I'm concerned about the steeply climbing COVID rates in Middlesex County and Littleton specifically. All the Littleton public school buildings have seen rates soar over the past few weeks. Currently, 10% of the middle school students and the staff are positive. Per state and CDC quarantine guidelines, after exposure, everyone in the school should be masking with the prevalence rate and ease of exposure. While we're entering a season with more open windows, we are also in a season of community events and celebrations. The CDC recommends wearing a well-fitted mask indoors in public, regardless of vaccination status, including K-12 schools and other indoor community settings. Can Littleton consider requiring masks indoors again, especially as community spread is affecting hospital capacity? Kids under 12 still can't get boosters, and kids under 5 still can't be vaccinated at all. Thank you, Margot Bloomstein, 7 Wilson Lane. That was the only piece of correspondence. So we got the metrics from Katrina. We went through those. Or we saw those. Yeah, that's about it.
Mr. Chairman, can you invite Katrina to be there when we all have?
Yeah, why don't I see if she's available for our meeting with the school committee?
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah. Any updates, board member comments? In that case, I will be in touch tomorrow ASAP with everyone regarding a time and date for our meeting with the school committee and or select board and
Katrina too.
And Katrina, yeah. And now all we need is a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn. Have a nice weekend.
I will second that. Roll call vote. Oh, we got a hand up in the audience.
Uh-oh, we got trouble.
Ted Doucette.
Yeah, we do have trouble. Okay, I'm gonna start my timer, right? I got 2 minutes here for public input.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I was a little discouraged tonight, and I came back in. I wanted to hear this public hearing on sewage treatment within 100 feet of wetlands. You know, I feel like there's some skepticism from the board about what the engineers are trying to do. When I came back in, there was something about people are going to start trying to say, oh, if you have more than X number of alternatives, we're going to need an alternatives analysis. You know, what is that number? How do we come up? How are you going to come up with that number? What's the right number? And, you know, to think that as engineers who are professional engineers who have to look out for the clients, have to look out for regulations, and have to look out for their license, stamp, and reputation, to think that we don't do some sort of alternatives analysis is not, it doesn't give us this big sense of trust. Just because we're not coming in and saying, oh, I laid out this one and it cost this much. I laid out this one and it cost this much. A lot of the stuff is just, you know, you see what in there fits and see, you know the general cost of them, and you do what's best for, you know, for all the parties involved and all the concerns that you have. You know, and then I worry if you're going to give us alternatives to use, are you then going to select the alternative that we have to use against our professional opinion? And, you know, the professionals that were on tonight, most of them had, you know, 10 to 20 years of experience. I myself, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've designed over 300 systems. I've done over at least 300 soil evaluations. And then for somebody to come in who has never designed or probably never witnessed a soil evaluation to come in and tell me what alternative to use. Well, now, if I don't agree with that, who stamps the plan? So I think there needs to be, I guess, I get this sense that there's no trust, that we're doing the best that we can and doing what we can. And if we have to start doing alternatives analysis, it's going to increase the process, it's going to increase the time, and it's going to increase the cost to get this done, you know, to get any type of design done. So to be micromanaging these professionals who have the licenses, education from the board, it just hurts a little sometimes that we're not trusted. You know, and when you're putting all these regulations together, are you consulting with any type of professionals to find out where the line is? And, you know, are you going to just come up with this, you know, in your meetings and, you know, how you guys feel about it? So, I don't know, just like, you know, tonight we're having 3 engineers who all were telling you the same thing time after time, and then coming up with, you know, adding things on. It's almost like there is a feeling that the job is to take whatever the engineer does push back because we're trying to get away with something. And just, like, the job is to push back because we shouldn't be getting away with something. So,
Are you trying to get
I
away with
just
something?
like,
Ted?
I'd love to sit down. What's that?
You trying to get away with something?
Never. So here's the thing about it.
That's
too.
2
My
minutes and 30
designs-
seconds, Ted.
All right.
Thank you. We're not
Thank
beating
you,
you up.
Ted.
We're not trying to beat you up, Ted. We're trying to do our best to protect public health. And we have a bunch of regulations we have to look at. We are consulting
we come in-
professionals. We are talking about getting people to be on the team for peer review. We are not trying to bust your chops.
But when I come in with a design and I think about everything, and then you throw in a foot of extra material, it's like, it's like this level. I just feel like it's trust. I'm not busting your chops. I guess busting your chops. Yeah, I guess I do feel that, and I felt that you were busting everybody's chops equally tonight. Actually, I think I got it lighter than some of those other guys, but it's insulting sometimes to come in and do all our work, with all this experience, and then just to get,
Ted, you
everything
shouldn't feel
questioned. Start to
insulted.
finish.
You should be glad that we care.
But you don't care enough, I think, to
Now I'm
learn
insulted.
enough.
Now I'm
to help us.
insulted.
Huh?
Now I'm insulted, and we're going to end the conversation. Thank you for your input.
Yeah. All right.
Goodbye.
So I guess I can't get put on any.
Thank you, Doucette.
So yeah, we had that motion to adjourn. Somebody was working on it.
You want me to repeat it again? Make a motion to adjourn?
Yes, thank you.
Don't worry about it.
A roll call vote. Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis, yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Jason Ferrari, yes.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason,
Now, Wason, yes.
and Kevin Baker votes yes. I'll send out a note about our next meeting as soon as I have it tomorrow.
Hey,